Well, hello there, my friends. This is Garrett J. White, the founder of Wake Up Warrior, and this is the Warrior Wealth Podcast. My friends, welcome to another week, another episode, another journey down this insane game we call making the dash, keeping the dash, and growing the dash. If you were unfamiliar with the Wake Up Warrior movement, I would encourage you to check that out at wakeupwarrior.com, or you can head on over to warriorbook.com, where we will give you the insights to a unique science of having it all inside of what we call the Warrior's Way, a book known as the Warrior Book. It's a book that has had a huge impact on over 10,000 men's lives around 27 different countries now at this point, who have been impacted by this belief system, and this show serves a unique and specific purpose, and that purpose is to teach and to train on the concepts of business and money. Now, we have already begun down the journey, and this episode itself, we're going to continue down the path. This is episode number 4. If you missed the pilot, well, you can go back and learn more about my story there. Learn about who I am, where I came from, how I got here, and why in the hell you should even listen to me. Last couple of weeks, though, we have been following a format and a structure and a frame that I am going to continue to follow today. That frame and that structure goes under the following. We start with this idea of power. And the whole concept here inside the Warrior Wealth idea is to talk specifically to businessmen who run their own show, who make their own dough, and inside of that game, they're the one that write the checks. They don't collect the checks. They're not entrepreneurs. They're not employees, but they're businessmen. Now, it doesn't mean that the topics we talk about here cannot serve you if you are not an entrepreneur. But I want you to understand that the businessman is the man that this show is actually built for. Now, why would we go after that topic? Why would we go after the businessman? Because that's who I am. I'm a businessman. I've been a businessman for 17 years. I run 4 major companies right now. I push the envelope when it comes to the topic of production, but inside of that place, what I can also tell you is that the game of investing and money is a confusing game to businessmen around the globe. It was confusing for me. It was confusing for the men that I know. It was confusing for the men around the globe that I have had interactions with. And that confusion itself has been dispelled inside of our brotherhood with the Wake Up Warrior Brotherhood, which again, you can check out and learn more at warriorbook.com. But it's nothing I've actually taken public. And so here, this show every single week is my gift to you of coming back to the money topic. Not a new topic for me. Not a new conversation for me, but absolutely a conversation that needs to be had, and hopefully a conversation that's going to inspire you to think differently in the way you operate as an entrepreneur, as a businessman, when it comes to the topic of money and investing. So we said we were going to start this thing off with power, which is what we did in our second episode. And I dove into the topic of power and how you are ultimately the number one asset in everything that you do in investing. That regardless of where you're at, regardless of what you're up to, regardless of what your business is or is not, regardless of the industry that you play in, the product that you sell, the service that you deliver, the experience that you provide, that regardless of any of these facts, regardless of how many employees you have or how much revenue you do, at the end of the day, there is one thing that is accurate and true every single time, and it is that your business is a mirror of the power of who you truly give yourself permission to be. Now, we took that power idea and we said, okay, well, power itself plays in, but power also plays in to this other topic, which is production. And so that was episode number 3. Production, which is the ultimate doing of shit. It's the doing of things in business, from marketing and sales and systems to automation to leading people to the entire game of business. We talked about production, ultimately doing the actions required to produce leads, to sell leads, to produce clients out of those leads, and from that place to move them down the line of fulfilling on what we ultimately delivered or promised that we had sold. So we talked about production. I went off on that in episode 3. Now we're here in episode 4. We're going to continue down this path. We're going to take power. We had that topic. We linked that up to production. We linked that production up to our topic for today, which is the topic of profit. Profit. Now, not to be confused with the idea of a prophet inside of a religion or a prophet from the past inside of a book of scripture that matters to you. What I am talking about is profit, P-R-O-F-I-T. This is the actual making of money. Now, in order to have that conversation, though, we have to actually discuss this under a couple different angles. The first angle we're going to talk about this in is under the angle of actually your mindset around the topic of money. Because unlike me, there are a lot of individuals who were born, and I should say, unlike some individuals, I was actually a guy that was born not into money. I didn't have money. I'm first generation millionaire in the way that I produce, a multimillionaire. Inside of that, like, I'm a first generation guy. No one in my family and no one in my wife's family had ever produced the kind of results that I've been able to create as an entrepreneur the last 17 years. Now, inside of that place, though, I didn't come from a place where money made a lot of sense to me. And so you and I, we are raised as individuals in this topic of profit, the ultimate topic of money. And the first piece is that we were trained and ingrained as children to look at money from a certain place. And this was driven by the types of parents that we had. So your investing patterns and your business patterns and your productive patterns were highly influenced by the patterns of your parents. And they were highly influenced by the patterns of the churches that you belong to, the society that you were raised in, the community that you were raised in, the country that you were raised in. These countries, communities, societies, and civilizations, and the way that our ultimate social structure looked at the topic of money impacts the way we today operate as individuals inside the topic of profit, which is profit is nothing more than the actual result of value created, and in that place, money is available. But we've got to look at how you actually look at money. So I had no idea how money was produced. Like, to me, growing up, money itself was kind of this lucky thing. And I literally had such a small thought process around money. One day we were sitting around drinking with my college buddies. Again, there's some great stuff that comes up when you're drinking with your college buddies, but there was some topics that came up that didn't make a lot of sense, which is very common for the course when you're drinking with your college buddies. So I'm sitting there drinking with my college buddies, and the topic comes up, would you, and that was the topic, would you, and then you fill in the blank. And the fill in the blank that I got was, would you donate your pinky toe to science? Which you can tell we're high and drunk as fuck, because who the hell ever wants to donate a pinky to science? Pinky doesn't need your science doesn't need a fucking pinky. Like, your pinky toe means nothing to science. But anyways, we're sitting there and we're debating this, and we're all choosing sides in this idea of whether or not we should donate the pinky toe, and would you donate the pinky toe for $25,000? They went around the room. Each of us got a chance to answer these questions up each. And then it came my turn. And they looked at me, and I looked my buddy dead in the eyes, like that uncomfortable stare. He looked at me and he said, would you donate your pinky toe to science for $25,000? I sat there with a very confident pause, took a drink from my Corona Light glass bottle, looked at him, and I said, yes, I fucking would. And everybody cheers. Yeah, donate your pinky toe to science. Woo! I was an idiot. I had no idea. I think about that now. I'm like, dude, you actually need your pinky toe. Like, your pinky toe is a big deal to, like, staying upright, standing, walking, doing a lot of shit. Like, even laying without a pinky toe feels a little different. Now, if you're a guy that doesn't have pinky toe, it's okay. I'm a guy that doesn't have bottom lower mandible teeth. So we both have something we thought we needed and don't have anymore. Nonetheless, I was not donating my lower jaw of all my teeth to science. I lost them with cancer. And here I was donating my pinky toe for a nominal contribution of $25,000. Like, that was my psychology. I thought $25,000 was a lot of money. Like, I was raised in families that did not make more than $60,000 a year. Like, these were the people I knew that made the most amount of money were guys that made $60,000 a year. Like, that's what I knew. I was like, you made $60,000 a year, this guy's fucking loaded. Now, if you made $100,000 a year, I didn't even know anyone who made $100,000 a year. So this is crucial, because inside the game of making very little money and being in a family that did not have entrepreneurs and being in a family that did not make a lot of money, I had little to no education about money in general. Now, I don't know what your story is. Maybe you were raised by a badass entrepreneur who taught you marketing, sales, and systems, who taught you the power of money and how money is an idea and a concept, and that it can be manipulated and created and moved and molded at your own, only limited by your own ideas. But I was not that guy. I was raised with the following reality. If you want money, go figure out how to get it. The only solution we can give you to go get it is to get a paper out and then to go to college and then hopefully get a job. And so that was the path I was raised in. I was not on the entrepreneurial bug. I was not I had no idea I would be an entrepreneur growing up. I had no idea I would be a businessman. Hence, I had no idea how investing actually worked. I had no idea what it meant to be an investor. The very first time I'm educated on the idea of money, I read the book Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. I then go on over the next 3 years to read everything and anything that he produced, also becoming the largest cash flow board game event guy on the West Coast in the United States of America. We love this shit out of us. Like, I knew nothing about money until I started studying the topic of money. And I began down the path of leaving my game as a PE teacher and a football coach, and I started down my path of entrepreneurism in the mortgage and banking industry. But I didn't realize that my belief systems around money were going to affect everything that I did when it came to investing. It also was going to affect the fact that I had a really tough time having money. Now, I never ever imagined this would be the case. See, you and I, we are raised in a game with money to look at resource or money from very different angles. One possible path to be raised in is the path of scarcity, where we're raised in this belief system that there is a limited supply of money in the world, that there is a limited supply of opportunity in the world, that there is a limited supply of employees, a limited supply of buyers, there's a limited supply of advertising spots, like everything inside of that man's mind is driven by this idea that their life itself ultimately has a foundation of lack. Okay, now this was the general rule of thumb for me when it came to thinking about money, when it came to thinking about my business, when it came to thinking about spending money on my family, when it came to thinking about spending money on myself. And it was also the game that came when it came to investing. Scarcity had roots in it. Like it was a mindset, and an investor and a businessman who goes down the path in the game of scarcity, he lacks the ability to see that the number one investment in his entire portfolio is himself. That he is the number one asset in his world. Scarcity puts you at the bottom of the fucking barrel. And there you sit as a businessman, which is ironic as shit, because it's your creativity, it's your desire, it's your fire, it's your excitement that ultimately pushes you to a place of power to be able to actually produce in the first place. Yet, we come back to this topic of money and investing. And if your world operates like mine did, from a place of scarcity and a place of lack, then it impacts and erodes and destroys the ability for you to invest. And the first level is that you start to devalue yourself in the equation of investing. You will begin to trust supposed experts and professionals in the stock market. You will trust individuals in the bonds market. You will trust individuals in the mutual fund games, in 401k games. You will trust individuals in the investment world who, by the way, most of them have never made the kind of fucking money you've made as a businessman, but you are trusting them because why? Because you live by a story that is rooted in scarcity, that just like I did, that says you are not the number one asset in your investment portfolio. The second thing that scarcity does, scarcity also teaches a man the following, and it has him devalue not just himself, but the next domino is he devalues his business. He begins to look at his business with less value in his eyes than some magical cryptocurrency strategy that just fucking popped up, and another Jack Mehoff currency that popped up this last week with somebody else with curly, crazy fucking hair on the internet talking about the next new Jack Mehoff cryptocurrency. You get excited about this new shit outside of you. You start to think that the number one investment in your life is found outside of your business. Scarcity has you look at your business through fucking retarded eyeballs. You don't look at the bottom line. You don't realize that your investment in you, number one asset, your investment in your business, number one investment. You don't see that shit. You default all of your brilliance, your talent, your strengths, and your abilities, and you hand it off to somebody else. And this was me. My first one in business was rough because I wanted to be an investor, but I lived from a place that said that an investor is somebody who puts money into some shit he doesn't understand. And hopefully he gets some ATM money. That's what I was looking for. I was looking for some ATM money. Please give me some money, some free money. So I got in on IPOs on companies, lost 9 times out of 10, won big on one. Complete gambling crapshoot. I was investing capital in apartment buildings, land. I didn't know shit. There was a time I was writing a check, $600,000. We were putting this check there. I wasn't actually writing it. $600,000 check. I'm handing this check over to this investment group on a deal that I don't understand, in a game that I have no experience in a package deal in real estate in which I had zero ability to impact the value and valuation of this investment game. And as I'm handing the check over, there is a voice inside of me that says, bye-bye. Goodbye. And I'm sitting there, and I know this money is not coming back. It is not fucking coming back. But there I am, trying to be cool, trying to be all up in my ego, trying to get people, trying to feel important and significant inside of being, quote, an investor. And so there they were, the, quote, investment group sitting in my office. And there I was, feeling like I had a huge cock, handing this $600,000 check over to them, knowing inside that I had literally just pissed that money down the toilet. Like, it would have been funner to bring a video camera in, put the $600,000 check in the toilet, piss on the check, and flush it down, and at least then I'd have a video to show for the $600,000. But what I got from that was a learning lesson. And yes, as you imagine inside of that story, that money did not come back. That money and a lot of money did not come back. And as I was sitting in my recovery years, in 2008 and 2009 and 2010, I was asking myself over and over again, like, how did I fuck this up? And there's a lot of people that wanted to blame the marketplace. They wanted to blame the banking world. They wanted to blame the government. There were so many people. Like, I get so fucking tired of hearing from people who said, oh, we were killing it. We were killing it. And then I know what's coming next. Like, it's what happens every time. It's the same fucking story. Here it comes again. Here it is. Oh, I was killing it in real estate. And then the market crashed. I'm like, listen, asshole, it is 2018. If you are still telling that story, that means for the past decade, you have not done shit. This is why I don't trust men who have not built, lost, and rebuilt, who came from the real estate space. Do you want to know why? Because any monkey with a fucking pulse and a pair of balls could make some money back then. That's it. You didn't have to be smart. You didn't have to be intelligent. You didn't have to be strategic. Shit, you didn't even have to be a businessman. That's why I laugh at individuals whose only business was a mortgage company. You're like, dude, every asshole opened up a mortgage company. You didn't even have to take a test, for God's sakes, to get a mortgage license. Now, listen, I have a huge respect for the mortgage industry. I got no problems with it all, but back then it was a shit show. And as I was recovering, and as I was dealing with a lot of the issues why I'd lost power and why my productivity had gone down, which I shared with you in the last two shows, the one thing I started to see was I was devaluing myself as an investment. And that scarcity had actually had me gamble money away because I was uncomfortable having it. Now, I know at some level to some of you, this sounds completely ridiculous. You're like, how is it possible that you could feel uncomfortable having more money. Now, rewind back 2003. Robert Kiyosaki is speaking at this event. Okay, I'm there. I'm part of one of his students. We're involved in the equation with him. He's sharing at this event I'm at. I think it was $10,000 to go to this event. He's sharing at this event from the stage, and he shares this idea. He says, you're going to face a lot of different money problems, but one of the biggest problems you're going to face is having a lot of money. And I was like, give me a fucking break, dude. This guy's out of his mind. Like, I've been following everything he's been saying. I've read every book he's ever put out. Like, I've read all his Rich Dad Advisor books. Like, this was me, again, like, here with 2018, so this is 15 years ago. I was like, I've read all the books. Like, come on. It wasn't until years later that I started to understand it. That's why some of you listen to this, and you're here on this show. You're a businessman. You're running the game. Maybe you're a backpack entrepreneur. It's you and one person. You got some contractors out there. You're doing well. You're making a couple $100,000 a year. You don't have a ton of expenses, so you feel like you're fucking loaded. I get it. I've been there. I understand it. Maybe you're a big business, 150 million, you're listening to the show. Regardless, you're a businessman who's saying, listen, we've all gotten to a place in which the money itself outpaces who we actually are as a businessman or an investor. Like, it outpaces us. Like, the money gets bigger than our capacity to manage it. Just like a team gets bigger than our ability to deal with the team. Or the opportunity explodes and becomes more. This is individuals whose businesses outgrow their ability to sustain a predictable system for managing marketing, sales, and fulfillment, accounting, and taxes. So we have this scarcity game that is driving in. And I'm going to challenge you to take a look at where that is for you. Because I realized my issue was not marketing. It wasn't sales. It wasn't systems. It wasn't all these things. My biggest issue was the fact that I was very uncomfortable with money. I was uncomfortable with having it just sitting in accounts. I was uncomfortable with cash. I had this story. It had to be productive. Even if I was handing the money away to people who didn't have my best interest at heart, and even if I was investing in what, quote unquote, was nothing more than me wanting to feel cool about myself. Now, there's a flip side to this. The flip side of this scarcity story is a story of abundance. And now, abundance I would know nothing about. Nothing. I was not raised in abundance financially. I was raised in abundance in love. My mom and dad cared about me tons. My mom hustled her ass off for me. My college scholarship out of high school to Boise State to play football, like everything I did, my mom was like all in to support it. My mom and dad just didn't know anything about money, so they couldn't teach me what they didn't know. They couldn't give me training on shit they'd never lived themselves. They'd never learned it, so they never lived it, so they couldn't lead me on it. So abundance, though, was something I'd experienced in emotion and love and opportunity and possibility, but I'd never experienced it in money. It wasn't until years later I was sitting at a seminar with a guy by the name of Les Maguire. Les Maguire passed away in a plane crash back in 2006. He had started a movement known as the Producer Revolution. It was actually a radio show back in that day with those guys and helping run that show. And Les had such an impact on my life. And I was sitting there in one of these events. It was actually living in Las Vegas at the time, and he lived up in St. George, Utah, or he's actually up in Salt Lake City, Utah. And they were running an event in St. George, which if you're unfamiliar with this area, Salt Lake's about 5 hours north of St. George, and St. George is about an hour and a half to 2 hours north of Las Vegas. So I drove up from Las Vegas, paid $500 to go to what was called the Curriculum for Wealth Workshop. I drive in there with my M3. I loved it. It was my brand new BMW M3. It was my first M car, M series. Ended up having a lot of those over the years. And I drove up and I came in. It was in my gray suit. I remember my car was gray. I had my gray suit that matched my car. I gave $500 for the ticket to get in. And I sat there for an entire day and listened to them talk about these two ideas, scarcity and abundance. But I didn't understand it. Like, I didn't get it. And they would sit there and talk about the fact that life itself in a game of production is driven by principles, that your principles are ultimately what gets you paid, that the tools, the hacks, and the tactics will always change, but principles will always govern you the same. Principles of capitalism, principles of socialism. These are two completely different ideologies for operating in money. The same thing goes with the idea of scarcity and abundance. And I started down this event experience with them that day. And it took about 7 hours. That afternoon, during this event. It's like 4 o'clock, and Les is up there, and he is sharing. And he says something, to this day, I don't even know what it was he said. But this thing inside of me opens up. And I start to feel into this world of what abundance actually is. Now, just because I felt it didn't mean I changed much in my habits, because I had a whole lot of other fucking belief systems that were completely jacking me up. But that was the beginning stage of introducing me to abundance. And abundance was this possibility that money was an idea. That money was more of an idea than it actually is a thing. Think about this. You go down to the grocery store. You take your wallet. You've got a card in there. You put a bunch of shit in your cart. You drive the cart to the checkout stand. You get to the checkout stand. You check out. They're doing the checkout. Let's assume you don't go to self-checkout. They're checking it out for you. And they're beeping all your shit through. Beep, beep, beep. And then you take your card out of your wallet. You swipe that card through the little card machine. Or maybe you got a chip, so you got to put it in the chip thing. You do your code. Maybe it's a credit card. You push enter. It gets done. They give you a receipt. The groceries get put into the cart and off you go. Like, what the fuck just happened? You had a piece of plastic in your hand that you swiped on another machine that was made of computer chips and plastic. And somehow that machine, connected to a telephone line and an Ethernet internet line, communicates with a bank, which communicates with another bank, and a bunch of decimals begin to change places, and numbers move through a matrix and a grid, and somehow at the end of it, it all makes sense. I get the groceries, I go home and I have a green smoothie, I also have a beer, right? The grocery store gets paid, and the bank makes their piece in the middle off of the Visa and Visa and MasterCard fees, as well as a shitload of other 10X and a whole bunch of other shit on the back end we'll get into in our next show. So, but you're sitting there in the middle of a game. See, abundance allows you to see that money is a game. It's not even a real thing. Like, do you realize that just the printed currency, the number is somewhere between 10%, 6 to 8 to 10%, 12%, somewhere in there, of the actual money available in the world on computers is actually available in printed currency. Even the printed currency that we currently have does not even have anything backing it. If you look on your dollar bills, if you're here in the United States, it will say U.S. Treasury note. That means it's a promise to pay. It's like a fucking IOU note from Dumb and Dumber when they find the bag of cash or the suitcase of cash and they spend all the fucking money and they fill it up with IOU sticky notes. And then they deliver with IOU sticky notes. That's the kind of money that we have. We have a fiat currency. And that fiat currency means that not only is our dollars losing value every year, meaning it buys less now than it did last year, but on top of it, our money has literally become a fucking belief system. It is a belief system. Now, to all the cryptocurrency guys out there, I get you. You're probably listening to some of you and you're like, yeah, speak it. Let's go. Listen, crypto's the same thing. It's an idea. Whether I'm mining for Bitcoin inside of that game or I'm dealing with dollar bills, right? Or I'm dealing with a card with bank transactions occurring, all that I'm actually experiencing is the belief system in virtual gaming. Abundance allows a man, particularly a businessman, to see that money itself is nothing more than a game. It is a game of numbers. It is a game of value creation. It is a game of doing what? Creating value for other people. Ultimately, the ability to solve problems. Now, the baseline of all business and production and wealth speaks the following. In the game, aka the belief system of money, you can produce more money, aka create more wealth financially, if you can solve more problems for more people more frequently. And those are the three pieces. Those are three. I can solve more problems for more people more frequently. So when you step back as a businessman, like, how do I want to make more money? Well, put some money over here in this stock account. Give money to your private banker at Chase to put into a securities account. Fuck you very much. Not happening. But if you're going to put that money somewhere, understand that when you are investing, when you are moving dollars down the street, if you want to make more, at the core, you've got to solve more problems for more people more frequently. You've got to solve more problems for more people more frequently. You've got to solve more problems for more people more frequently. If you can figure that formula out, there is no mystery to the game of money. And unlike what scarcity teaches a man to believe, which is that there is a finite number of dollar bills in the world, that there is a finite number of actual currency in the world, this is a fundamental lie. And that lie will have you look at your business as limited. That lie will have you believe that the pie is scarce. But when you can step into a place of abundance, when you can step into a place of power, and this is what the warrior's way to having it all has always been about. It's been about guiding businessmen to a place of personal power and being able to link that power to production, being able to take that production and link it up to profit, getting paid, but not just in business, getting paid in body, being, balance, and business. So if you've not checked out our book, Warrior Book, I'd encourage you, if you're listening to the show for the first time, you have no exposure to us outside of that, I encourage you to head to warriorbook.com, where you can check out the new book that we released here in 2017. First initial launch in digital format in 2016, but now available for you for a $100 investment. We'd love to send that book to you. Again, head on over to warriorbook.com and join over 10,000 men from 27 countries who have begun to live a unique art and science we call the warrior's way to having it all. All right. So we're going to take the foundation that we've worked on so far, and we're going to take it further. So let's assume that we believe the game. Okay, let's just assume you believe the game. You obviously do, or you wouldn't fucking be in business. Because if you don't believe the game, you can't play. But the game is not dollar bills or Bitcoin. It's not crypto. It's currency is nothing more than the means of dealing and equalizing exchange. So dollars or Bitcoin, these currencies that you're hearing about all over the world, all that currency did was give the ability for you and I to exchange easier. Back before this, what we had was a conversation with the following. You raised chickens, I made bread. But I wanted steak. Well, that's a hard deal. How do I get steak if you have chickens, I have bread? Right? It was a difficult game. You could exchange chickens with my bread for me with bread, yet I was still stuck with chickens and I wanted a steak. Now I got to go take the chickens and I got to go negotiate with somebody who has cattle. And this bartering system was why currency was born. And why the game was born was to create a middle play for you and I to be able to do the three things I already spoke of. To solve more problems for more people more frequently. To solve more problems for more people more frequently. Well, currency and having a currency that we all say we believe in allows us to do that. And we believe it has power. And in abundance, we believe the game of currency. And inside of it, currency and profit is the purpose of business. See, your business, to be in integrity, must be profitable. If it is not profitable, you do not run a business in integrity. You run an expensive burden. Now, this comes down again to the belief system. Are you okay with your business making a shitload of money? Are you okay with this? Legitimately, are you okay with having large amounts of cash sitting in your bank accounts? Are you okay with this? Are you okay with doing a high volume of revenue, daily, weekly, and monthly in your bank? Are you okay with seeing lots of money moving around your world? Because if you're not okay with it, if you're not comfortable with it, and there is a problem, now if you're raised around it, My daughters are being raised around them. My daughters are very comfortable with asking for what they want. They're used to 5-star resorts and hotels. My daughter's used to asking, Dad, can you take me to school in the Lamborghini Aventador? This is their world. I was not raised in that world. And so I struggled with the idea of not only money, but I struggled with the idea of actually having money. And worse than that, I struggled with the idea of getting paid in my business, getting paid very, very, very well. But there's 3 kinds of getting paid in business. 3 kinds of profit that we're speaking about. Some of you are going to say that one of these is not profit. I get it. Chill out. Follow me. The first number that we look at inside a business that we are focused on, and most people are way too fucking focused on it, is what we call top line revenue. Okay? Or our gross revenue to the business. Okay? So we look at this inside and we're going to call our business a kingdom. And we have this kingdom with the castle walls around it. We've got this kingdom that we are establishing as a king called our business. This kingdom has a revenue stream that comes into it through the sale of products, services, or experiences. So you're creating wealth in this business by solving more problems for more people more frequently, by selling products, services, or experiences that service those individuals by solving the problems that they have. Now, maybe the problems they didn't know they needed to solve, and you help them through marketing to figure that out, that they should want to solve them. But regardless, you're sitting in this same place. Okay, we have this top line gross revenue. So I'm sitting in a call 2 days ago. It's actually 3 days ago on time I'm recording this. And I had 70 interviews with individuals coming into the Brotherhood. And I had a guy come onto that call, and he was talking to me about his biggest challenges, his business. And we went down the line, and I kept asking him questions, and I got more and more questions. And he kept saying, we're doing $250,000 a month. I want to do $300,000 a month. And he kept coming back to it. He's like, I'm doing $250,000 a month, but shit, we just can't break the barrier. I need to get to $300,000 a month. And I came back and he kept saying this over and over and over again. And I asked him, I said, okay, well, what is your profit on a monthly basis? He's like, well, I already told you, we do $250,000 a month in sales. I want to be able to sell $300,000. I said, you're not listening to me. I was like, I realize that that's your top line revenue. I realize that is one key KPI. That's one key performance indicator, is to have what? Is to look at the top line revenue of your business. Okay. I get it. Okay. Now listen to me. What is your bottom line revenue? Okay. What is the profit available to the company after delivering the goods and services? After manufacturing, after all the things that you're doing, what is the actual profit to the business? How much money is the business making? And he sat there quiet, and he didn't have an answer. I said, okay, well, if you don't know that answer, let me ask you a different question. He's like, okay. I said, how much money are you personally taking from this business on a monthly basis? He said, well, what do you mean personally? I said, how much money, you as the king, are you actually taking? We have the king's cash, and we have the kingdom cash. The kingdom cash is the profit of the business. The king's cash is the amount of money taken from the king's business into the king's vault. How much money are you taking home every single month? And if you don't take money that way because you take quarterly withdrawals or dividends, if you do it as an annual lump sum based on payouts, okay, that's fine. But what is the amount that you're actually taking home? And after a little him and hawing and a few stories, he got to the bottom. He said $4,000. I said, okay. So you are taking home $4,000. You are selling $250,000. You want to sell $300,000 a month. You don't know what the net profit of the business is, but you do know that you're taking $4,000 a month in salary. I said, these fucking numbers are all over the place. You're taking $4,000 a month in take home. You have a $250,000 a month revenue business producing $4,000. Do you realize that you could make more money as a manager at McDonald's? He was quiet. I said, help me understand this. Where are you putting all the cash? Are you hiding the cash? Are they sitting in your business accounts? Where is it? He's like, well, what do you mean? I said, exactly what I'm saying. If you sell $250,000, Like, what are your expenses to deliver on that product, service, or experience? Like, are you sitting at like $249,000 a month in expenses to be able to fulfill on $250,000 in sales? And guess what? You wouldn't be the first business to think that selling more was going to actually help you make more. I'm going to have you like really consider this. Look at this. Look me in the eyes if you're watching this. Selling more does not equal more money. Selling more shit does not equal more profit. And when you live from this place of looking from the outside in, when you live from this place of looking at your business from this top line revenue only focus of what is the ultimate kingdom's total revenue, the challenge is you're seeing it through blinders. You're not looking at the number that actually matters. Okay, so then we say, okay, well, what is the number that matters? All right, well, what is the profit margin of that business? If you do $250,000 in sales, do you have $150,000 in expenses? Are you left with $100,000 margin? Margin being nothing more than the gap between what the top expense game was, okay, what we brought in total revenue, and the expense revenue number, and we marry those up together, and the difference through simple math gives us the margin. Now, I realize a lot of other shit that could go into that. Don't fucking go there for now. Stay with me in principles. So I got $250,000 in sales. I got $150,000 in expenses. That means I got a $100,000 margin between these two numbers. I said, okay, great. Let's assume that that's the number. Can you help me understand how you as a businessman are only taking $4,000 home a month? Now, we then went down the story that all businessmen go down to. Well, you know, I pay for my trucks and I do this and all my expenses are written through for tax purposes and blah, 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 blah. And I get it. I get it. I do the same thing. I totally appreciate it. I get it. If you particularly run an LLC, inside of that, all the tax liabilities ended up on you anyways. By the way, side note, I am not a licensed stockbroker or a advisor in the securities game. Side note, I am not a individual who is licensed as an attorney. I am not an accountant. I am not a tax planner. I'm a guy here on the show helping give you a little idea on how I see the world. So we're sitting in this situation, we're sitting in this game, and we're having this conversation back and forth. I'm like, okay, dude, listen. She got $100,000 net based on your margins right now. We're just making that up. And he's like, yeah. I said, okay. And you're taking $4,000 home a month. I said, what number is more important to you? And he's like, what do you mean? I said, what number is more important to you? He's like, well, you know, I think the 100,000. I said, bullshit. He's like, what do you mean? I was like, no, exactly, bullshit. Not the right answer. Here is the fundamental flaw that exists with this idea of profit, is that most businessmen were taught to find profit in the following equation, and this was my first 10 years as a businessman. You sell a bunch of shit, you pay all the business expenses, you get to keep what's left over. The end. Like, that was the entire model as a businessman. Work your ass off, take all the risk, and set a target for a top-line revenue number with hopefully the right amount of margins to give you a little bit left over to which you don't know what the number is, and at the end of the year, you hope that you can take a big draw and or just end up dumping it back into business for tax purposes. Which means the king eats last. Arguably the number one mistake I made as a business owner my first 10 years. And I made a lot of fucking mistakes. But the biggest one was I paid myself last. I paid myself with what was left over. My scarcity mindset had also gotten roots inside of my business world. I believed that I was a servant to the business. As the business got bigger and more employees, and 5 employees went to 10, and 10 went to 20, and 20 went to 50, and 50 went to 100. I began to feel like a slave to my own business. And the worst fucking part was the fact that I was the one who got paid last. Now, I know some of you are going, oh, dude, you're a dumbass. You should have put things on, giving yourself a salary and a quarterly dividends. I get it. I had a salary. And I would randomly take profit from the business and bring it over to the king and put it into the king's vault, which we'll discuss next week's show. Randomly bring the money over. There was never a psychological place that my mind played from that said the following: the king eats first. This was arrogant, I thought. This was ridiculous. This was obnoxious. This was not how a man was supposed to operate. A man was not supposed to put himself first. He was not supposed to put himself first in his marriage. He was not supposed to put himself first in his family. He was not supposed to put himself first in his business. And so for the first 10 years, I put myself last. But the craziest shit is that I was the number one asset to myself, in my family, and my business. Which means if I wanted to produce value in my businesses, if I wanted to produce value in my marriage, if I wanted to produce marriage in my family, this would require that I actually invest in me. This would require, just as the airlines say, that I put my mask on myself and then I help my children. This is hard. Scarcity mindset teaches you to not do this. And funny enough, that same fucking thought process plays over into business. Pay yourself last becomes the ideology and the psychology of most businessmen. Not only do they pay themselves last, but then they take what profits they did take, and inside of that place, they begin to give most of it away to investments that sit outside of their number one investment, which is they begin to pour it into other people's businesses, except their own. Like it's a shit show. Like it's a fucking shit show. Like I don't even know what else to say about it. It's a goddamn shit show. And I lived it. For 10 years, a decade. People were trying to talk to me. They were trying to give me counsel. Mentors were trying to give me counsel and wisdom around this. They're like, dude, you're fucking this up. But it didn't matter because I literally couldn't see. I was literally blind to the possibilities of what my life could be as a businessman and investor. Because why? Because scarcity ran my money game. Not the number one asset, I was not. Not the number one investment, I was not. My business, not the number one investment. I was always looking for some lucky place to go while handicapping myself and cutting my own balls off by paying myself last. So the king eats first principle works out just like this. If I am the king of this castle, if I am the number one asset in my business, if my business is my number one investment, there is no investment that will give me a higher rate of return than investing in the number one asset and investing in the number one investment, which is my business. If this is fucking true, then this demands and commands that the king stay in abundance. And the fastest way for the king to not be in abundance is for the king to be starving. A general cannot make wise decisions if he is starving. And so what looks like an arrogant approach to the game, it looks like a selfish approach to the game. People will bitch and moan about how much money entrepreneurs make who pay themselves first, who say the king eats first. And side note on this, I realize that in startup businesses there is time where you're going to have to put money back in the business. A lot of it. 80% of the profits in my business went back into the businesses every single month for the past 7 years across all 4 companies. I get it. I appreciate it. I understand it. But I also operated from a different place this last 7 years that I didn't in the first 10 years as an entrepreneur, which is I recognized that I was valuable. That the businesses that I built were valuable. And in order for those two things to continue to produce ridiculous amounts of rate of return for me, it would require and it would demand that I begin to do one simple thing that would compel me into abundance, and that is to pay the king first. That means I determine what I'm going to take every month, and then from that amount, I work back on the numbers to our bottom line revenue number, to our top line gross revenue number. I look through our expense loads. I look through our business expenses. I look through the personnel payroll. I look through all of our taxes and I say, here is the number that I want. Now tell me how much we're going to have to sell. Maybe your number is $50,000. You're like, I want $50,000 a month in King's cash. I'm going to take $50,000 a month at the beginning of the month, every single month. I am drawing that money into my personal accounts. Or maybe you're ear tagging it by moving it out of a business account into another account, and that account itself is allowing for the money to sit on the sideline and a holding pattern in a game we call the vault. But nonetheless, you commit to it. You say, I'm going to take the money out. Now, let's look at this game for a second and come back to the conversation with the man I was talking to. And he said, well, Garrett, I have XYZ dollars. I think the number was like $35,000 or $40,000. He said, I got like $35,000, $40,000 I keep at any given time in the business. I said, I appreciate that. The kingdom needs cash. But the king needs cash also. And here's the reality. You will not treat the king's cash the same as you treat the kingdom cash. Kingdom cash sits in a business account, is looked at differently through the eyes of the businessman. It is not looked at the same as money that's sitting inside of his personal accounts, inside of his personal strategies, inside of his personal vaults. It's not looked at the same. The money is not looked at the same at all. Don't fucking kid yourself. You don't look at the money the same inside of your business as you do the money inside of your personal accounts or inside of accounts that you have allotted to say this is king's cash money. The king must eat first. And he acknowledged this. And this has been the case with thousands of men that I have been in conversations with about this. None of us look at it the same. Maybe you're a superpower guy. You're also a fucking unicorn. And you got a Pegasus wings and you fly around and your horn on the far in front of your forehead glows at night. Right? Unless you are a total anomaly to the equation, this is just not the case for most businessmen. So they pay themselves last. And then what they do pay themselves with, they end up taking the money and they invest it into something they know nothing about, violating the number one asset, violating the number one investment principle. And so we're left with this king cash. If I want to make $50,000 a month, and then I look back and I say, okay, cool, I'm taking $50,000 a month. I will be a $600,000 a year plus $400,000 to $500,000 in bonuses. I'm going to take $1 million. Maybe that's your game. Then you start with those fucking numbers and you say, these are the numbers that I am taking as the king. This is the king's tax. This is the king's tax for dealing with the stress. This is the king's tax for dealing with the chaos. This is the king's tax for dealing with it when this kingdom was a fucking cardboard box down by the side of the goddamn river. You as a kingdom will be paying this tax to the king forever. Because long before you were here, and long before the baker shop was built, and long before the blacksmith shop was built, and long before there was an army and a military to protect us, and long before all of that, there was simply a king with an idea. A king who believed he could build a castle, but everyone made fun of him because his crown was made of cardboard. And that was you as a businessman. You believed long before anyone else believed. And yet, if you are not careful in scarcity, you will feel weird and awkward and feel awkward at a level that's difficult to describe about taking king's cash off the table. You'll feel weird talking to your accounts. You'll feel weird talking to your CFO. You're like, no, motherfucker, I'm getting paid. As you look at the salary that he's making. But see, he wasn't there when you were alone in the cardboard box. He wasn't there when there was no military, there was no army. He wasn't there when there was no one to counsel. He wasn't there for decades before you were willing to fucking sacrifice. And so you as a king eating first matters. You as a king taking profits off the table, then forcing the production of the kingdom to support the king's cash, not the other way around. I'm going to have you consider the many of you listening to this right now, this show will change your fucking life forever. Forever. If you get what I'm talking about. You don't get what I'm talking about, well, you're going to be back in the rest of the bug with the rest of yahoos. You're going to devalue yourself. You're going to devalue your businesses. You're not going to believe in cash. You're not going to store shit at the core. You're not going to have any vaults. And you're going to end up putting all your money into shit you don't understand while at the same time working your ass off for someone else's business to rise by getting profits from your own business and dumping it into somebody else's fucking business. You are the game, my friend. This is not the case for employees. This is not the case for regular men. I'm not talking to regular men. Regular men invest in 401ks. Regular men put money in mutual funds. Regular men invest in your businesses. You are a businessman. The world revolves around your courage. The currencies and the economies that we operate in revolve around your commitment. It is you as a businessman who take the fucking risk. It's not the government that creates jobs. You motherfucker create the jobs. You create the opportunities. It is your courage to expand the walls of the kingdom, to take the kingdom to an empire that gives you the capacity and the courage and also, in this case, the right to get paid. And the right to maintain massive, massive vaults at the core of your kingdom, filled with cash to keep you and the queen and the kingdom in abundance, so that the wars that you wage are ones by choice, not by ones by compulsion. Brother, you fucking matter in this game, man. Stockbrokers, investment advisors, man, they all mean well, but they're not for you, bro. Not for you. Quit fucking giving them so much credit. Stop giving them so much of your money and so much of your commitment when they have not fucking earned it. Nothing crazier to pull up to the bank in my $500,000 Aventador, walk in and recognize that the man in charge of investment advice inside of that bank is a salaried employee for Chase Bank who does not make as much as any of my executives. And this is the fucking guy I'm supposed to take advice from? That guy is there for normal dudes. That guy is there to help employees. That guy is there to help individuals who don't have the capacity like you do. That individual is there to support a game that is not your game, and that game is okay. But this show is not about them. This show is about you. This show's about you for the first time pulling your fucking head out of your ass and recognizing two simple truths. You are the power play. Your business is the power play. You are the number one asset. Your business is the number one investment every single time. You must access power. That power must be linked to production inside of marketing, sales, systems, and fulfillment, and accounting around the game of forcing profits into the business. And the way we determine the numbers we build in our business is driven by the primary and most crucial desire, which is, what does the king desire? What do you want? And you don't have to have a reason for it. You want it because you want it. And inside of that place, you then build the game. You build the teams. You expand the empire so that all in your organizations prosper and benefit. You build them so that all of your clients receive the highest level of value. You invest in the one place that will give you the returns that no other place could ever compete with, that is not a gamble, and it is a manageable risk, and that is, you invest in you and you invest in your business, and you store shitloads of cash inside of the King's Vault, which will be our show next week. My brothers, I hope that today's episode has been able to shake up some of the ways that you feel that life is. I'm hoping that it's giving you new perspective that I only wished I'd had 17 years ago when I began down this crazy path of being a businessman. There are few that will understand the risks associated with this with you. There are few who will ever understand what it really means to put it all on the fucking line like you do every day. But here with me and here with the men inside of this game and the men inside of Wake Up Warrior, we get you. If you haven't taken an opportunity to head over to warriorbook.com to pick up the manual for the art and science we call having it all across body, being, balance, and business, I would encourage you to head over to warriorbook.com today, Make a $100 investment and we'll ship that book and manual your way, and you can begin studying, living, and experiencing the expansion of the Warrior's Way, which is the fastest path to power of any play I've ever seen for a businessman. And we've been proving it for 6 years with 10,000 plus men in 27 countries. And we'd love you to be the next one. I'll see you here on this next week's episode where we dive into the topic of, protection and why at the core of your entire kingdom, cash is king. And in a game where more chaos is driving and more chaos is expanding, the game of protection is the final piece in the equation as we bring into a culmination our first 4 episodes in this block of power, production, profit, and protection. And then we will start the cycle over again with new angles and new conversations. Thanks so much for being here. Would love your subscription inside of iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, and or SoundCloud. You can also head on over to warriorwealthnow.com. Again, that's warriorwealthnow.com for all the show notes, tips, tricks, all the text, the audio, the video. If you'd like to watch this fire, head on over to warriorwealthnow.com. You can check it out all over there. Would also appreciate your subscription and reviews inside iTunes and any of the other players that you choose to use. My friends, this is Garrett J signing off here with episode number 4 in the Warrior Wealth series. I look forward to seeing you next week.